So I'm Spencer Hooks, and I'm director of the games group here at Dolby. Dolby is actually nearly 50 years old now, kind of hard to believe. And it started back with an idea of Ray Dolby's, which was how to solve this problem that was facing the recording industry. So the recording industry back 50 years ago was using magnetic tape and multi-track recording, and there was a problem that they were facing around noise and hiss of the tape. And Ray Dolby, while on a trip across India, actually had this brilliant idea of using a compander to solve the problem and get rid of that tape noise. And that really was the start of Dolby, and that was A-type noise reduction, which then eventually turned into B-type noise reduction, which was targeted at consumer cassettes. And that was really the start of the licensing business for Dolby, and that's kind of the start of Dolby as we know it today. And through the history of Dolby, we've moved forward into new products and new technologies, moved into the cinema with first making movies sound better and then transitioned to surround sound. We then, really the Dolby that you know today really started with the DVD. And so the DVD format was using Dolby Digital, and also Dolby Digital is used in HD TV. And that's really what catapulted Dolby into the digital modern day company that we have today. And of course now we're on Blu-ray, streaming movies, in the cinema with new technologies, and of course in games. So we started in games in 1994 with a game called King Arthur's World on the Super Nintendo system. And that the goal there was to connect to these new home theater systems that Dolby had started licensing technology into called Dolby Surround. So that gave you, for the first time, surround sound in your living room that was trying to emulate what was happening in the cinema. And with King Arthur's World on the Super Nintendo system, we were able to, for the first time, provide that same kind of immersive surround sound experience in a game. So, like I said, we started with King Arthur's World with surround sound, with Dolby Surround on the Super Nintendo system. And then we moved to newer versions of Matrix surround sound on PS2, the GameCube, and the PlayStation 2 was the first platform to have Dolby Digital, which was integrated there for DVD playback and was also used in games for cutscenes. So the cutscenes could be very cinematic and could feature Dolby Digital to have discrete surround sound, so they could have 5.1 for the first time in games. And from there, we transitioned to the first console that actually had interactive surround sound, interactive Dolby Digital 5.1, and that was the original Xbox. So the original Xbox had a real-time, low-latency Dolby Digital encoder that was running on the platform, and that games would send their audio to then connect via the optical connection to home theater systems. And that technology actually still lives on today on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One to provide that immersive surround sound Dolby Digital experience over the optical connector or over HDMI. Dolby Atmos is kind of a rethink or a reinvention of surround sound as we know it. In the past, when surround sound was mixed, it was mixed using the concept of channels, or you can think of like the speaker feeds. So we talk about 5.1 or 7.1, that's channels. And so when a mixer was creating the mix for a movie, say, they were mixing to those channels, and there was no concept of objects or the sounds as an individual sound in the three-dimensional space. With Dolby Atmos, we're moving away from that channel mix and moving to objects. And the idea with objects is that you can more accurately represent the sound in the listening room or the theater by taking and sending more information about the audio and the artist's intent through to the final rendering device. So if you're doing a mix, you would say, well, I don't want to just take the sound and send it to the left channel. I actually want to place this sound very precisely at this location in the listening room. And then that data about where that audio is meant to be placed gets sent all the way to the final theater. And so the theater can say, well, I know how to play that sound in that location because I understand how many speakers are in this theater, where they're placed, and what they're capable of. And we just in September of last year launched Dolby Atmos for the home theater with several AVR partners to have receivers in the home theater that really drive that experience. And in addition to that, we've also been partnering with speaker manufacturers, because we understand that in the cinema, you can put speakers on the ceiling, but in a home theater, not too many people are really going to be willing to do that. Some people will. Some people are really maybe have a dedicated home theater system, and they're really excited about trying to replicate the cinema experience. But then a lot of people don't have the the space for that, or they don't want to run the wires. And so we've created a new speaker technology that lets you get that same experience of sound overhead that really immerses you, but without having to put speakers on the ceiling. And so we've licensed that into speakers from several different manufacturers. At the core of the technology is the concept that of flexibility. You don't have to have your speakers at a specific angle in a specific location that matches exactly what happened in the mixing room. And that's really one of the fundamental benefits that it brings to the cinema and the home theater, because now when you create your mix and you're mixing that object to a specific location, you don't really have to take into account what the speaker layout is going to be in someone's house, because their home theater equipment is going to take care of that for you. And so basically, if you buy a Dolby Atmos home theater system, when you set it up, they all come with a microphone, so you can do your room EQ and calibration, and that all gets taken care of as a part of that step. You tell the system how many speakers you have, and it figures out what they're capable of. And then when you play back sound through it, it understands that and does the right thing with the audio to try to match what happened in the mix room. So you don't have, if your speakers are in the wrong place, it doesn't really, well, first of all, there isn't really a wrong place anymore. You can now tell the AVR where they are, but then those changes in the placement of the speakers don't impact the experience that you get as a listener like they would have with 5.1 or 7.1. So we see the opportunity on mobile, on tablets and smartphones for speakers and headphones as a really interesting opportunity and a really key challenge to solve for us, because we know that while people are listening, you kind of have two use cases on a tablet or a smartphone. On the speakers, the most important thing is to make sure that the audio is actually loud and clear. That's the first problem that you have to solve before you can really think about how do I make the sound more immersive, because if you can't hear it, it can't be immersive. And so we have technologies that we're applying to mobile devices that are really focused on, first and foremost, making the audio loud and clear. And we do that by working really closely with our OEMs to measure the devices and understand what they're capable of and provide technology that can make sure we're getting the most out of those devices. And then when it comes to headphones and that immersive experience, we're delivering that immersive experience over headphones, but also over the speakers. So once you solve that loud and clear problem, then you can think about, okay, well, now how do I make audio more immersive? And we're doing that using technology that takes advantage of the science of how we hear sound, how we perceive sound, and how sound interacts with the room and also our head and our bodies, to try to portray that sound in a way that our brains think is all around us. And that's also what we're doing on headphones. So on headphones, the technology is called the head-related transfer function. And like I said, what we're doing is we're taking advantage of the way sound interacts with our head, the distance between our ears, the pinna, that is this flappy bit around our ears, and also the room around us, to try to deliver the same kind of experience you would get from speakers over headphones. And it's not a trick. It is really taking advantage of the science of neuroscience of how we actually hear audio. So we've been working really hard at that, and we've started with headphones. And the first product to ship in the mobile market was a tablet from Amazon. It's the Fire HDX 8.9 edition. And it features our Dolby Atmos headphone technology so that we can deliver that same immersive experience over headphones and actually deliver sound above you in that experience. And we've also just recently at Mobile World Congress announced 3 more products, a smartphone and 2 tablets from Lenovo that also feature Dolby Atmos. There are several. One of those is we view actually Dolby Atmos as a technology that is at its core able to deliver this immersive experience across many different kinds of content. And so we've already launched in movies, obviously we talked about that, but we also see that it's an interesting fit for games, because games are really at their core, and they've been this way for about 15 years, they are object-based. In the language of Dolby Atmos, they're object-based. I think game developers would think of them more as sound emitters in a 3-dimensional space, but they're really the same kind of thing. And so we see that there is really this natural connection between what we're doing with Dolby Atmos and the way games have worked for years. And so we think that's a really interesting opportunity. We also see that virtual reality is a really interesting opportunity for what's happening in games and really more broadly what's happening across the industry. And the thing that we see as really interesting is the intersection of virtual reality and interactive media and what's happening in Hollywood. And so we're working with a company called Jaunt to help deliver Dolby Atmos to VR experiences. And one of the first pieces of content is a Paul McCartney concert, and it's really amazing because you can wear your VR headset and look around the concert and really experience the concert, and you hear the concert moving around you. It's really exciting. We really view audio as a key part of the gameplay experience. If you talk to a game developer, what they're really trying to deliver is this ultimate immersive experience where the gamer feels transported into the game world. And audio is the only part of that experience that they're delivering that can stretch beyond the screen. If you think about playing a game in a home theater system, you've got a little window into the game world. And that, the graphics are amazing and lets you see that game world, and it's pretty realistic, but you're only looking through a window. And with audio, with surround sound, you can deliver the rest of that world to the player. You can build that entire immersive experience in a way that just really you can't deliver without sound. So we really, George Lucas famously said that audio is half the experience, and I mean, I think in games you could argue that it's even more than half, because it doesn't just deliver that immersive experience that sucks you into the game world. It also can tell you a lot about competitively what's happening in the game. So if you've got an enemy behind you, there's nothing on the screen that's going to tell you there's an enemy sneaking up behind you. But if I hear his footsteps coming from the right surround speaker, then I'll know that I need to turn to the right to defend myself.